This video is based on the paper, The US Dollar Devaluation Strategy and the Evolution of Monetary Hegemony, written by Director Yong-Kwan Choi of the Commons Foundation. Now, let's examine how the United States over the past century has repeatedly redefined the rules of the global economy, devaluing the dollar whenever necessary to preserve its monetary dominance and overcome domestic crises. What appeared to be moments of chaos often concealed a deliberate strategy, turning crisis into opportunity. The Age of Gold, the Great Depression, and the revaluation of gold. In 1929, the U.S. economy collapsed in the Great Depression. When Franklin D. Roosevelt took office in 1933, he issued an unthinkable command: deliver all your gold to the government. Under Executive Order 6102, citizens were forced to surrender their gold to the government at $20.67 per ounce. Then, in 1934, Roosevelt raised the official gold price to $35 per ounce, effectively devaluing the dollar by 40%. At that moment, the gold standard was broken, and a single piece of paper, the US dollar, became the new foundation of the global monetary system. The Age of Oil, the Nixon shock of 1971. Decades later, in 1971, President Richard Nixon made a historic declaration: the dollar will no longer be convertible into gold. The Bretton Woods system collapsed, and the world plunged into uncertainty. But America had already prepared a new foundation: oil. In 1974, the US and Saudi Arabia secretly agreed that oil would be traded only in dollars. Thus was born the petrodollar, and every nation needed dollars to buy oil. A new era began, one in which oil, not gold, upheld the dollar's credibility. The Age of Liquidity, the 2008 financial crisis. When Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2008, the world fell into financial turmoil. The Federal Reserve responded with a historic policy: quantitative easing, QE. Through QE1, QE2, and QE3, the Fed purchased over $4 trillion in bonds and mortgage-backed securities, flooding markets with liquidity. The flames of crisis were temporarily extinguished, but the shock waves spread worldwide. America lightened its debt burden, and the dollar's dominance only grew stronger. For the U.S., crisis was a tool of power. The age of unlimited printing. The 2020 pandemic. When COVID-19 halted the world, the Fed announced unlimited quantitative easing. It promised to print as much money as needed. Within a single year, US M2 money supply surged from $15 trillion to $19 trillion. Gold hit record highs, and Bitcoin soared past $120,000. Emerging market currencies collapsed, inflation exploded, yet Washington's printing presses never stopped. This became known as the digital Nixon shock. The dollar no longer lived on paper, but in code. The dawn of the digital currency war. The dollar survived and migrated onto the blockchain. Through Tether, USDT, USCD, and PayPal USD, the US now circulates digital dollars through the veins of the global economy. In response, China launched the digital yuan, ECNY, and Brazil introduced PIX. The new battlefield for monetary hegemony lies not in vaults or oil fields, but in data networks and blockchain infrastructure. This is why the IMF and BIS are rushing to regulate stablecoins, because the future depends on who controls trust. America's next strategy. The U.S. is not stopping here. It is reshoring key industries like semiconductors and batteries, rebuilding its manufacturing base, and embracing Bitcoin as digital gold. Companies like MicroStrategy and Tesla now hold Bitcoin as treasury assets, and Bitcoin ETFs have been approved on Wall Street. By integrating Bitcoin as a new form of digital gold, the U.S. is preparing to revalue the dollar by raising Bitcoin's price and devaluing its own currency. And one card still remains. The U.S. government holds about 260 million ounces of gold, but on its books, that gold is still valued at $35 per ounce. If it were revalued to $4,000 or even $10,000 per ounce, over $2.6 trillion in new assets would instantly appear. A soft Nixon shock, capable of recalibrating the global economy without restoring the gold standard. When the world trembles, every move by the United States reshapes not only its own destiny, but that of the entire world. American monetary policy sends asymmetric ripples, bringing debt and inflation to developing nations, capital flight and currency crises to emerging economies, and asset bubbles and inflationary pressure to advanced ones. This is why countries worldwide are racing to diversify their digital payment systems. The final question. From gold confiscation to the petrodollar, from quantitative easing to unlimited QE, and now to the digital currency war, America has followed the same pattern. Sacrifice the dollar's value, export the crisis abroad, and strengthen its hegemony. But the future will no longer submit to dollar dominance. The war between dollar-based financial assets and non-dollar real assets has already begun, manifesting in the conflicts between the U.S. and China, and between the U.S. and nations like Brazil, India, and Russia. Countries clinging to the dollar as a reserve currency will see their real asset values, real estate, stocks, and financial holdings, fall as the dollar depreciates. Meanwhile, nations building non-dollar, blockchain-based settlement systems will create a multipolar monetary order grounded in mechanical trust. In this new era where trust itself becomes the essence of money, we will all witness the birth of a new international order. MicroBitcoin. New value begins with trust.